Welcome back to the United Christian Marriage Podcast, where we help you build a healthy, united marriage that impacts everyone around you now and for generations to come. Now, before I dive into what we're talking about, I do want to just clarify, what does united Christian marriage even mean? Because I know we have a lot of new listeners, and I've been doing some market research, and I realize that some people don't actually understand what I mean by that. So, united Christian marriage is essentially speaking about the biblical passage that says the two will become one. And yes, that is a physical, like you physically, do the act of the two coming together. But it's also, I believe, a spiritual thing. Like there's a spiritual side to this of being connected in marriage, and how can we create that oneness in more areas of our marriage? That's what we're talking about here. That's what this is all about. So you'll see me popping in some episodes that are like what to do if your marriage is like in crisis. But most of the time we're going to be talking about like, how do we just be a better wife? How do we improve our marriage? How do we handle those pesky things that come up? So we're going to be talking about that more and more. I'm so excited. So many fun, podcast episodes coming. So let's dive in though today, because today we're going to be talking about something that's like my whole jam here, and that is, what is self-coaching and how is it the answer to your marriage struggles? Is it the answer to your marriage struggles? So I'm going to really walk you through that, not so that I can make the decision for you, but so that you're fully educated to make the decision for yourself. So I just want you to imagine that like you can get into, so some of us spiral and things, right? Or maybe you go to distract yourself, or maybe you get angry and you react. Maybe you're like shutting down and you're just resisting different things, emotions, thoughts, whatever it is. And so I want you to imagine you're in one of those scenarios, whichever one is most common for you. And I want you to just imagine that you get into that, and boom, you have awareness of the fact that you're in the middle of it. Because I think half the time we don't even realize, and then it just keeps going. And then we just feel crappy and we don't know why. And then we snap or we shut down. And it just leads to unhelpful thoughts, right? So I want you to imagine you're in that. But instead of following the pattern that leads you right back to where you've been going, instead this time, you realize what's going on, you have awareness, and then you have a tool you can depend on to pull you out of that. So instead of taking it out on your spouse, instead of snapping on them or shutting them out or shutting down or just turning on the TV to drown out the noise of your emotions, you know how to communicate clearly because you are aware of what's going on inside you. It all starts with awareness, and that is why I believe that coaching is so powerful, because it gives you awareness, it teaches you about how your brain works, and it gives you tools to use once you have the awareness and you figured out, okay, this is what's going on. All right, now let's dive in. I'm going to break this down way further so you guys can decide if this is the tool that you are lacking in your marriage. Hey wives, I see you. I know the pressure you're carrying, the pressure to be the perfect wife, the devoted mother, the woman who keeps it all together. You're told to be soft, feminine, and gentle, yet also strong, capable, and a provider. The world pulls you in 100 directions, stretching you thin, leaving you exhausted, and wondering if you're enough. But I need you to hear this. God has more for you. More for your marriage, more for your motherhood, more for the legacy you are building. You are not meant to do this on your own strength. So press in, do the work, and trust that something greater is coming. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys about how I am prone to do this in my marriage so that you can see a real example of me failing. Because we all mess up, right? And I am doing so much better now as a wife, now that I know these tools, but I have not always been this um fluent in it. Okay, we'll just say that. And not that long ago, like last year, I had no idea about any of these tools. If you would have looked at me a year ago, I mean, I was just trying my best with what I knew, but I was certainly falling short in my sin a lot. So let's just talk about what this looks like realistically. So, um, there's a lot of times when I would feel an emotion very intensely, for different reasons. I had 2 pregnancies very close together, and then there was the postpartum period and breastfeeding, and all of that just really messes with your hormones. And so if you've ever been through any sort of like hormones being off period of your life, which that can happen for a lot of reasons, but then you probably understand what I'm saying if you are a wife out there, and you'll probably get it. But it can be hard, like when you're feeling those really intense emotions, to immediately go to awareness. Like that's not your first initial reaction most of the time. I'll tell you what my initial reaction is. My initial reaction is usually that it's my husband's fault, even if he didn't actually, like, he didn't even trigger it in most situations. Like, it genuinely probably had nothing to do with him, but I will still, like, find a reason to blame him for it. And it'll be not so much anymore. I don't want to say it like it's present tense because I don't really do this now, but for a long time, I did this regularly. Like, it was to the point where there was periods of our marriage where, like, my husband didn't even want to be home with me on the weekend because I was nasty to him sometimes. And I would feel horrible about it afterwards. Like, I recognized that it was not a great thing to do as a wife, but in the moment, I couldn't seem to wrap self-control around my emotions. I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. And I didn't have a tool to handle it better. And so I'd snap. It would come out. And I would say, you didn't wash the dishes, or you didn't wipe the counter down the right way, or you didn't load the dishwasher right, or you did this, but you missed the other thing. And I was nagging and complaining constantly to the point where he was happier to be at work, where he at least got a good job every once in a while. Like, people weren't ragging on him as much there as I was at home. And that's saying a lot, because I don't know if you guys, my husband works in a factory right now, and I don't know if you guys have ever like heard or seen or been in a factory environment, but like these blue collar guys, like, not to label all blue collar guys, I'm sure there's really nice ones out there who are Christians and mind their mouth and their attitude, but most of them don't. Okay, most of them are not nice. And like, my husband will come home and tell me some of the things that they say to each other, and I'm like, whoa. Whoo, there's power in the tongue, guys. You gotta watch that. But yeah, so that was saying a lot, that like he didn't even want to be home with me on the weekend. And I pretty quickly knew, okay, something's really not right here and I need to change something. And so I'm so grateful that I was able to learn the coaching tools and start to self-coach myself, because wow, that was crazy and powerful. So yeah. So hopefully that like gave you some insight to what I'm talking about a little bit. I mean, it could look a lot of different ways, because like I said in the beginning, there's all these different examples of how you may typically handle things and how that may differ, if that makes sense. Like, if you're shutting down, and instead of me, like, where sometimes I shut down, but mainly I react. But if you were more shut down, then that would look different for you. So, but it all comes back to the root, which is our thoughts. And sometimes we feel the emotion before we realize what thought is causing the emotion. Like, we may think the emotion comes first, but there's usually a thought behind that emotion, even if it's more subconscious than it is like at the front of mind. It's always there. Now, when we talk about PTSD, because I know that there's a lot of trauma involved in the lives of my listeners, for most of you, probably not all of you, but most of you have gone through some sort of trauma, whether it was a little T trauma or a big T trauma. I mean, we all at some point at least go through a little T trauma. That's the way of life. That's just the fallen world we live in. But when you have any sort of PTSD from a trauma, that can kind of mess with our, what we call our primitive brain, or like our, our outdated brain that's like still gets stuck in those fight, flight, and freeze responses. And they just added fawn too, I think. But yeah, so that is what we're talking about there. Like that, it can mess with that. But even if you have PTSD, keep listening, because this can still help. Like, this is still a powerful tool, and it's still very similar, like all the information I'm telling you. So, okay, I'm going to stop rambling and we're going to get into it now. So, what is self-coaching? Self-coaching is the ability to pause, observe your thoughts, and intentionally choose a better response, right? This is essentially what we're told to do in scripture. We're told to be slow to anger. We're told to be slow to speak and quick to listen. We're told to watch our words, right? To speak life. We're told to take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. So, in my opinion, this stuff really, really plays into biblical truths. Now, I'm going to do a whole episode on this and talk about, like, is self-coaching biblical? Is it new age? Spoiler alert, I think that it's a tool and it can be used for either. But I am going to do a whole episode breaking that down for you guys, for anyone who's like wondering, okay, what are the actual scriptures are referencing, all that. That's coming soon. But just for the sake of time now, I wanted to give you the brief overview. And so in self-coaching, we're essentially like, instead of reacting from our like primitive, you could say fleshly brain, like our brain that is wired all the way back to like what our ancestors needed to survive, instead of reacting out of that, we learn to respond from our thinking brain. We're able to respond from a biblical place instead of a sinful place. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. We're going to break it down more though. So how your brain defaults in these marriage problems, how does this play into marriage, you may be asking? Well, the primitive brain seeks comfort and pleasure, and it wants to avoid conflict or pain. It wants to avoid any discomfort, and it wants instant gratification. And so that's why we may lash out, stonewall, or avoid conflict, because our brain wants the easy way out. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's not that you're lazy. It's not that you're an angry person. It's that your brain thinks that conserving energy is a way to protect you, because it thinks that you might have to be chased by a lion or a tiger or a bear, So it's trying to save your energy. So when we like realize that our brain is just doing that to protect us, it allows us not to shame ourselves so that we can have the awareness. Because guys, shame and awareness, they can't happen at the same time. I just want you to realize that. Like, you cannot be stuck in a shame loop and also have awareness. And if you need awareness to pull yourself out of the cycle, then we need to do away with shame. And we need to realize that our brain is doing what it needs to do to protect us in a fallen world, but it may be a little outdated and it might get things wrong sometimes. So we need to be able to know how our brain works on default and be able to choose a higher way of doing things, a way that's more aligned with the Bible. So an example of this could be, if you feel criticized, your brain tells you to defend yourself. If your spouse forgot something important, your brain tells you they they just don't care about you. Like, if you're feeling ignored, your brain may tell you to withdraw. But those aren't healthy or biblical ways to respond to your spouse. But that's your brain trying to protect you. And then how do we actually self-coach? Okay, so now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. If you're not taking notes already, I would start now. 3 steps to self-coach in the moment. 1 is to pause and identify the thought. Ask yourself, what is my brain telling me right now? Example, that could be, oh, he never listens to me. Okay, so just recognize what it is step 1. And then step 2, separate the thought from the fact. The thought is he doesn't care. The fact may be he forgot to take out the trash or something along those lines, right? Like, whatever the situation is, obviously it would change. But the fact is very unemotional. It's just the plain fact of what everyone could agree to happened. And when we mix thoughts and facts, we react emotionally instead of logically. So we need to be able to separate the two. The 3rd step is to choose a more helpful thought. Maybe he was distracted. I can communicate this differently. Or maybe you could think something like, oh, well, maybe I didn't communicate to him that I want the trash taken out before the morning or something like that. Like thinking those thoughts that are helpful and that move you to action, that move you to clear communication or to a healthy solution. Those are the thoughts you want to think instead. And so the whole goal there is, instead of assuming, you can just ask. So in this example, you could say, hey, I noticed the trash wasn't taken out. Can we find a system that works? And so you probably are starting to see how this is a very helpful tool. And this is just a quick rundown. I mean, it's really hard for me to fully immerse you in self-coaching in a 15 to 20 minute episode. But that's why we have the program, and it's 12 plus weeks. Like, the curriculum on a base level is 12 weeks, but then we take it further with more sessions because sometimes we got to spread those out because they're pretty meaty. So that's why we take our time in the program. Like right now it's 6 months, and I may even take that up to 12 months at some point, depending on how the 6 months goes for people. So we really break this down. We really help you understand it, and so it's not so confusing and quick. Like we have to be on the podcast, which hopefully that wasn't confusing. But I want you to just kind of take a second too and reflect on how your parents handled disagreements, or how you watch them speak of each other or treat each other. And I want you to ask yourself, were they able to pull themselves out of a selfish moment, or did they give into it? Were they able to pull themselves out of those strong emotions, those strong default responses, or did they just let it happen, let it play out? Some of you may have watched your parents let their marriage be destroyed by these things that I'm speaking of right now. And so what I really want you to do is ask yourself how you want to show up in your marriage. How do you want your kids to see you model this? And just take a minute to absorb the impact that you could have on your family, on your friends, on your community, and obviously on your kids, on your grandkids. And that is powerful. I just don't want you guys to discount that. Okay. If you do want to go deeper on this, I can help. I offer free coaching sessions so you can get a taste of what this looks like. I can personalize it to you. There's no selling on the free coaching call. It's just me coaching you. And then if you do want to take it further, I do have the coaching program that is open right now. You can jump in and join one-to-one or two-to-two, right? Like it'll just be me and my spouse and you and your spouse, or just me and your spouse, or me and you. Sorry, guys, that was confusing. Okay, let me just say it this way. This is probably one of the few times that I am ever going to have this open as not a group. So if you really value like the intimacy of a one-to-one and you don't want to be in a group setting, then now is the time to jump in, because come like this summer, I'm most likely going to be turning this into a group program, and then it'll be a bigger setting. Still, I'll protect the intimacy of it and keep it small and make sure that, all the information stays in the group. But eventually the goal is for it to be a community thing. So if you are the person who doesn't want to get coached in a group setting, then jump in now. And I would love to coach you through this. So some encouragement before I let you guys go. You have the power to think better thoughts. You have the power to be aware of what is happening inside of your brain and in your body, what emotions you're feeling, what it is all causing. And when we are able to be aware, that is the power that can pull us out of a bad situation and put us in the driver's seat of our lives so that we can create a marriage that we love. And that's the goal, right? We want a thriving marriage. All right, guys. Remember, healthy marriages create healthy homes, and healthy homes change generations. I love you. I'm rooting for your marriage transformation, and I am praying for you. Have a blessed day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got so much value out of it. And if you loved this episode, could you do me a quick favor and click 5 stars and leave me a review? It would do wonders for spreading the podcast out to other people who need it, and it only takes a few seconds. If you have an additional few seconds, why don't you go ahead and screenshot the episode and share it to your stories so we can spread the message and get more families healed. Thank you, and until next time, I will be praying for you, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye.